2024, I said this. What if we would live in a world where launching games in an unplayable state or broken would be illegal and companies would get legally prosecuted? What if I told you that companies like Ubisoft will sue if they try to shut down or take games away that you paid full price for? Last year, I also said this. And I'm sorry Xbox failed in such a horrible manner. Why am I sorry? When there's a monopoly and Sony has all the power, they become less consumer-friendly. So don't start partying. What if I told you the best place to play Xbox games is on PS5 Pro?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your new Xbox 360. Completely redesigned for the future of entertainment.
So I look at it and I say, okay, our player numbers are going up for the console platform. Our franchises are as strong as they've ever been. And we run a business. Like, it's definitely true inside of Microsoft. The bar is high for us in terms of the delivery that we have to give back to the company, because we get a level of support from the company that's just amazing in what we're able to go do.
Xbox is officially dead. I mean, not dead, but the Xbox we grew up with, the one that went head-to-head with PlayStation in the console wars, that Xbox is gone. And it's exactly what I was afraid of. Microsoft has officially decided they're not even playing the same game anymore. Here's what's happening. They've rebranded Xbox into this platform thing. It's not about the console anymore. Microsoft's whole focus is on making Xbox software the center of everything. No matter what device you're on, PC, TV, laptop, even VR headsets. Their new campaign says it all. A laptop is now an Xbox for your lap. A VR headset, an Xbox you wear. Even a freaking TV is an Xbox on the wall. They're not trying to sell consoles. They're trying to sell Game Pass. And honestly, it's smart from a business perspective. Microsoft's bread and butter has always been software, not hardware. They make billions with Windows and Office. Phil Spencer himself admitted it. There's no red line for keeping Xbox games exclusive anymore. They're fully open to bringing their games to other systems. Starfield, Halo, hell, anything could show up on a PlayStation or even a Switch someday. That's their strategy now. Put their games everywhere and make money from subscriptions instead of consoles. They're fully open to bringing their games to other systems. Starfield, Halo, hell, anything could show up on a PlayStation or even a Switch someday. That's their strategy now. Put their games everywhere and make money from subscriptions instead of consoles. Oh, and get this. There's not even going to be a mid-gen refresh like PlayStation's PS5 Pro. Phil said there's no point. Hardware upgrades don't move the needle unless you've got exclusive content to sell. You run on your PC. Consoles will still exist, but they'll be an afterthought, a relic for die-hard fans. I hate this, man. I get why they're doing it, and maybe it's even a smart move for their business. For the people who loved Xbox for what it was, it feels like we've been left behind. So, it looks like gaming is definitely heading towards an all-digital future, right? Most people are buying their games online instead of picking up physical copies, but what's interesting is that despite that, players still seem to prefer consoles with disk drives over those without. According to some recent data from Circana, the all-digital version of the PS5 is actually the least popular console this generation. Let me break it down for you. In the US, only 18% of PS5s sold are the digital-only versions. That means out of the 61.7 million PS5s Sony has sold worldwide as of August, only about 11 million of those are all digital. On the Xbox side, it's a bit more balanced. The Series S, which is Xbox's all-digital model, accounts for about 49% of their total Xbox Series sales so far, which comes to around 13.9 million Series S consoles sold. Now, why are people still leaning toward disc-based consoles even when most games are bought digitally? There are a couple of reasons for this. First off, the pricing isn't doing the all-digital PS5 any favors. Unlike the Xbox Series S, which is much cheaper at $300 or less, the all-digital PS5 started at $400. And with the new Slim version, it even got a price bump to $450. And get this, if you ever decide you want to add a disk drive later, it's going to cost you an extra $80, making it more expensive than just buying a regular PS5 with a disk drive already built in. Another big reason is that many gamers still have a collection of physical games from the PS4 era. Even if most of their new purchases are digital, they still want that option to pop in a disc for older games, or maybe even to watch Blu-ray movies. Plus, some major releases, like God of War Ragnarok, sold better in physical form than digital, which tells us there's still a decent demand for physical copies, especially when it comes to these huge first-party Sony blockbusters. years. Hey, have you noticed how 2023 felt like the end for a bunch of multiplayer games? It seems like once a game goes live, it barely survives a year. I mean, why drop money on battle passes or character skins when the servers shut down so quickly? It's frustrating to see developers abandon these projects almost as soon as they launch. It makes you wonder, why even start these games if they're just going to fizzle out? Take Apex Legends Mobile, for instance. It launched on May 17, 2022, but was shut down by May 2023. EA said the game had a strong start, but quickly lost traction. Mobile gaming is booming, so why didn't they stick with it? They didn't want to keep a dedicated team on it, and just shifted focus back to the PC version. If you're not going to support a game you just released, why release it at all? Then there's Gundam Evolution from Bandai Namco, which tried to be the next Overwatch, but didn't make it past November 2023, just over a year after its September 2022 launch. They announced some updates, but then decided it wasn't worth the effort. Gundam has tons of content to build on, so it's a shame they didn't try harder to keep it alive. Vampire the Masquerade, a free-to-play battle royale, left early access in April 2022, but never found the success needed to keep going. The servers will stay up until the player base dwindles. But why keep playing a game that's been abandoned? Rumbleverse, another free-to-play battle royale, launched on August 11, 2022, and was gone by February 2023. The launch of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has turned into a massive fiasco for Warner Bros. Discovery, resulting in a $200 million loss for their video game division. Here's a breakdown of what went wrong, according to a new Bloomberg report. The issues started early on. Rocksteady, the UK-based studio known for its single-player hits like Batman Arkham Knight, was tasked with creating a multiplayer game for the first time in 2016. Many new employees at Rocksteady didn't even know they were working on a multiplayer title, leading to a wave of departures. Development was plagued by frequent changes in direction. The studio shifted focus from melee combat to heavy gunplay and struggled to make the game's battles, levels, and bosses feel fresh and engaging. Key challenges for live service games where repetition can quickly kill player interest. Further complications arose when Rocksteady co-founders Sefton Hill and Jamie Walker left the studio in 2022. With these setbacks, the game's release was delayed until early this year, and the results were disappointing. Warner Bros. Discovery revealed the $200 million loss during their earnings call in May, with CEO David Zaslav expressing disappointment in the game's performance. The broader gaming industry is under financial strain, with many studios facing layoffs. Rocksteady's attempt to secure ongoing revenue through live service games like Suicide Squad backfired, and now they're pivoting to other projects. The Suicide Squad debacle highlights the risks of diving into new genres without the necessary experience and the challenges of maintaining a live service game. It's a tough reminder that not every big-budget gamble pays off. This is a topic requested from one of the channel members, and it's all about the incestuous relationships between development companies and these woke advisors, social media influencers. All right, let me break this down for you because it's wild how this whole system works. So you've got these game dev companies, right? And their entire goal is to sell you a game, obvious. But they're not just relying on traditional ads like commercials or billboards. Nah, they've figured out that the real power lies with influencers and these so-called advisors. It's all about perception now. Let's start with influencers. You ever notice how some content creators will hype up a game months before it comes out? Like, they're not even reviewing it yet, but they're already saying, oh, this game looks incredible. The devs flew me out to their studio to play an early build, and I can't wait for you guys to see it. That's not a coincidence. These companies are throwing money at influencers, flying them to events, giving them exclusive access, free copies, sometimes even straight up paying them to talk about the game. It's like a form of soft bribery. They're not saying, hey, here's $10,000, say our game is great, but they are saying, hey, we'll make you feel special, treat you like an insider, and your audience will love it. And guess what? It works. That's why so many influencers don't trash games, even when they're bad. They don't want to burn that bridge. It's why you see glowing reviews for games that are clearly broken. Remember Cyberpunk 2077? Yeah, a lot of creators were hyping that up before launch, and then boom, it was a mess. But by then, their job was done. The pre-orders were in. Now here's where it gets interesting. Alongside this influencer stuff, you've got these so-called woke consultants. And let me just say up front, I'm all for companies being more inclusive, more diverse, all of that. But some of these consultants consultants, man, they've turned it into a business. Think about it. The gaming industry had some major scandals in the last decade. Harassment, toxic workplaces. So now companies are scrambling to look like the good guys. They're hiring diversity consultants, bringing in these DEI advisors, and trying to out-progressive each other. Let me give you a hypothetical example. Imagine a game studio that had harassment complaints, and their response was to hire a consultant to train their staff. Sounds good, but then they also hire that same consultant to speak at their game's launch event, where they talk more about the company's diversity than the actual game. Meanwhile, they're flying out influencers who'll praise the studio for being progressive without ever addressing the original problems. It's not just about doing the right thing, it's about looking like you're doing the right thing. And because everything's so interconnected now, devs, influencers, consultants, PR, it's hard to tell who's being genuine and who's just playing the game, so to speak. And the influencers, man, they're in a tough spot too. If they call out a company, they risk losing access. And let's be real, access is everything. If you're not getting review copies or invites to events, you're irrelevant in that space. So they toe the line. Even if they're skeptical about these woke initiatives, they're not going to say anything. The worst part is that the audience, people like us, end up getting manipulated. We see the influencers we trust praising a game, or we see a consultant talking about how ethical a company is, and we assume it's all true. But it's all been carefully curated. It's a feedback loop. The companies get good press, the influencers get perks, and the consultants get paid. So yeah, it's all kind of incestuous if you think about it. Everyone's scratching each other's back, and as much as I'd love to believe it's all for the greater good, it's hard not to feel like it's just another way to sell us stuff and keep criticism at bay. Anyway, I could go on forever about this, but the bottom line is, always question the narratives you're being sold. Whether it's an influencer hyping a game or a company touting their wokeness, there's often more going on behind the scenes than we realize. Alright, so let's talk about this dumpster fire, because the Game Awards have officially hit a new low. I swear, every year, I think, they can't possibly screw this up any worse. And every year, they look me dead in the eyes and say, hold my beer. But now, they've taken things to a whole new level of stupid. They're changing the rules for Game of the Year. You know, the award that's supposed to honor the best new game? Now they're saying expansion packs, DLCs, remakes, and remasters can go toe-to-toe with brand new titles. Let that sink in for a second. A glorified patch, or a decade-old game with better graphics can now compete against actual new games created from scratch. It's like letting a microwave leftover enter a cooking competition. And yeah, I get it. Elden Ring's Shadow of the Erdtree expansion is amazing. But this whole rule change, it's so transparent. They're doing it just so Shadow of the Erdtree can sweep the awards this year. Like, you found a way to make sure a game from 2022 wins again. Meanwhile, all the genuinely new games that poured years of blood, sweat, and innovation into development, they're getting shoved aside, like yesterday's trash. Here's the real kicker. This move is basically a love letter to lazy developers and publishers. Why bother creating something new when you can just remaster an old classic or slap some DLC onto an existing game and call it a day? It's all about squeezing every last drop of profit without doing the hard work of actually making something fresh. And now, these rehashes can stand shoulder to shoulder with the likes of Black Myth Wukong or Stellar Blade, games that actually pushed boundaries. That's not competition, it's a rigged carnival game. The backlash has been swift and brutal, and rightly so. Gamers are furious, and the Game Awards aren't helping themselves by being so sketchy. Normally, they publish a list of the jury members. You know, the people who actually decide 90% of the winners. But this year, radio silent. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe it's because they know we're in the middle of Gamergate 2.0, and trust in gaming journalism is at an all-time low. So instead of being transparent, they just decided to hide it. Great look, guys. Nothing screams, we're legit, like keeping secrets. And let's not forget their advisory board. Oh, you thought the jury was bad? The board is packed with top execs from companies like Activision, EA, Epic, and of course, Phil Spencer himself. These people aren't here for fairness. They're here to protect their own interests. You really think they're losing sleep over some indie dev who just got snubbed? What's even funnier, or sadder depending on how you look at it, is that they could have avoided this mess. They could have added a best DLC expansion category. They could have made space for remakes and remasters in their own lane. But no, they crammed it all into one, making it impossible for new games to shine. How's a fresh IP supposed to compete with Elden Ring? That's like throwing a little league team into the MLB and wondering why they get crushed. And don't even get me started on how much they disrespect the actual gamers. Our votes only count for 10%. 10! The jury gets 90%, and we're supposed to believe this show represents represents our opinions? Please. It's like being at a family dinner where everyone pretends to care what you think, but they've already decided what's on the menu. At the end of the day, this is just another example of how out of touch these events are. They didn't ask us how we felt about this massive rule change. They didn't poll the community. They didn't care. And now, they're surprised that we're pissed? Spare me. I'm pissed, and I need to rant about what's happening with Ubisoft and this whole stop killing our games thing. It's absolutely ridiculous, and if we don't fight back, we're screwed. Here's the deal. More and more games are being sold to us like they're actual products we own. We pay full price, right? Whether it's a physical disc or a digital download, it feels like we own it. But nope, that's not what's actually happening. These games are designed to be useless junk the moment the company decides to pull the plug on their servers. Like, literally unplayable. And you know what's even worse? This isn't some obscure issue nobody cares about. It's everywhere. It's happening all the time. But because there are no clear laws against it, they're just getting away with it. Governments don't know what to do, and these companies are laughing all the way to the bank. We're trying to stop this with the Stop Killing Our Games initiative. And at first, it felt like we had a real shot. People were waking up to how scummy this whole practice is. But now, the momentum is dying. It's like everyone got mad for 5 minutes and then just moved on. I'm telling you, if we don't do something, if we don't keep making noise, these companies are going to keep pulling this crap. They'll keep killing the games we love, erasing our history, and acting like it's totally fine. And then one day, the game you love, gone. No warning, no recourse, no refunds, just poof. So please, I'm begging you, don't let this slide. Share the video, talk about this, write to people in power, do something. Because once this problem gets normalized, there's no going back. We have to fight this now, or we lose everything. There are two tragedies when games go dark. First off, the work of all those programmers, artists, writers, animators, modelers, and everyone else who labored on a game, maybe for years, is gone forever. Killing a game is also anti-consumer because, people bought that game. They paid for a product, the same way they'd buy a book, a movie, or a song, and they should be able to use that product for as long as they like. Troublingly, there's no legal recourse when a game you paid for gets shut down, but there are people trying to get laws passed to protect both the games and the people who buy them. It's like being able to keep a book on your shelf, even if the bookstore goes out of business. This also includes free games with microtransactions. If you've paid for extra content in a free game, you should still be able to use it even if the game becomes unplayable. It's about making sure that in-game purchases don't turn into a dead-end investment. Of course, there are some challenges: implementation. Making sure games remain playable after a publisher exits can be complex. It's not just about leaving the game accessible. It involves ensuring players can still enjoy it without needing the publisher's support. Publishers might argue that this law could be costly or difficult to implement. They might worry about the logistics and financial strain of maintaining games long-term. There's also the issue of how practical it is for smaller developers or publishers who might struggle with the resources required to comply with this law. You want my take? If you can't afford to maintain a game, don't make it. We the gamers don't feel sorry for you. Do you feel sorry for gamers when you pull the plug? If this law passes, we might actually get less online and live service games. And you know what? That's good. Because now, when a dev will be thinking about making a live service game, they will need to take in consideration the law. The games that will come out will most definitely be a quality one. Otherwise, the whole publisher could go bankrupt. High risk, high reward. To get this new law into consideration, there's a petition rolling out across Europe. The idea is pretty straightforward. If they can gather 1 million signatures from European citizens, the petition could actually push for the law to be considered. Think of it like a big, collective, "we want this" from gamers all over Europe. By signing, you're helping to make sure that if you've invested in a game, it stays playable. Even if the publisher decides to shut down the servers, it's like rallying together to ensure that your favorite games don't just vanish because a company decided to move on. The petition is open for a full year, so there's plenty of time to get those signatures. If you're a gamer who's ever felt the sting of losing access to a game you love, or if you just think it's fair that purchased games should be preserved, signing this petition is a great way to support the cause. So, if you're in Europe and want to make sure your favorite games stay alive, this is your chance to make a difference. Spread the word, sign the petition, and let's push for a law that keeps our digital playgrounds thriving for years to come. I'm glad that governments are finally looking into the gaming industry and starting to regulate it. It's like the Wild West out there, people getting fired left and right like they're dirty socks, crazy crunch times that destroy families, and massive corporations like Microsoft buying up studios for $70 billion only to shut them down right after, firing tens of thousands of developers. All they really wanted were the rights to the IPs, and they end up screwing us gamers with mediocre games, microtransactions, and launching broken titles. It's time for a change. It's time for the industry to be scrutinized closely. The gaming industry has grown bigger than both the movie and music industries and has been left unchecked for decades. But gamers' voices have become increasingly loud in recent years, and European governments are often the first to step in and say, "Hold up, you can't do that." Ubisoft continues its trend of chasing live service elements in its games, with the latest Assassin's Creed entry, Shadows, following closely in the footsteps of Valhalla. If you've played Valhalla, this may not surprise you. The system is packed with purchasable skins, mounts, and weapon cosmetics, many priced with Helix credits, a premium currency requiring real money. For instance, 600 Helix credits cost $6, which means a single weapon skin might set you back that much. Instead of offering traditional add-ons like season passes with meaningful content, Ubisoft is implementing battle passes in a single-player game. This model feels out of place and raises questions about its longevity. Once most players finish a single-player Assassin's Creed game, they usually move on unless expansions or DLCs are enticing enough to pull them back. But Ubisoft doesn't seem to view Shadows as a simple one-and-done single-player experience. Ubisoft's approach, as noted by content creators like Joe Raptor, seems to turn Assassin's Creed into something akin to an MMO without actual multiplayer. Yet, their goal? Keep players logging in regularly with dynamic missions, expansions, and a continuous feed of content. The rumored co-op mode for Shadows, reportedly planned post-launch, hints at this further. The leaks don't stop there. Reports reveal the Animus Hub, a launcher for future AC games, designed to house features like season passes and an in-game store offering cosmetics, environments, and even pets. This centralized hub aims to make Assassin's Creed feel more like a live service platform. While Ubisoft claims rewards in the Animus Hub will be free, their strategy is clear. The more time players spend engaged in their ecosystem, the higher the likelihood they'll splurge on cosmetics or other paid items. Free content isn't generosity, it's bait. The presence of ISU coins, another currency, alongside Helix credits, raises concern. Will Ubisoft juggle two premium currencies to nickel and dime their players? While ISU coins might be earned in-game, we've seen this model before. Free currency requires grinding, while real money shortcuts entice those unwilling to put in the hours. Ubisoft seems to be chasing the monetization strategies of games like Warframe and Apex Legends, but those are free-to-play titles. When applied to 70 single-player games, this approach risks alienating fans. A legacy of success. But for how long? Assassin's Creed remains one of Ubisoft's strongest franchises, with Valhalla generating enormous revenue through its live service structure. Ubisoft boasts of 30+ million unique AC players across their portfolio annually, including titles like Odyssey and Black Flag. While Mirage sold a respectable 5 million copies, it's a smaller scale project compared to the massive budgets of Valhalla or Shadows. However, this success comes at a cost. The more Ubisoft leans into live service elements, the more it risks alienating core fans who miss the days when Assassin's Creed was a self-contained, story-driven experience. Will Ubisoft ever learn? The consistent backlash against these monetization practices raises the question, why doesn't Ubisoft change course? The answer might lie in sheer profitability. While critical voices dominate social media, there's still a significant audience quietly spending on cosmetics and expansion. In the end, Ubisoft's stubborn adherence to this formula suggests one thing. Until these practices stop being lucrative, they're not going anywhere. Whether Shadows thrives or flops remains to be seen, but one thing's clear, Ubisoft hasn't learned their lesson. Ubisoft made a huge number of cultural blunders, I guess I'll call them such as using the flag of a real-life Sekigahara reenactment group without permission, or more recently, merchandising a figurine that has Yasuke posing in front of a one-legged torii gate, which is best known for being a monument in Nagasaki commemorating the loss of life when America dropped the second atomic bomb.
They told me that waiting for this crash to happen is pointless because in their opinion, we are already within a gaming crash right now, Western-wise anyways, as they specified. They also told me that they were shocked when they heard that Tencent was in talks to take Ubisoft private or outright buy them. As this source, which I said has a lot of experience in the industry, they claim that Tencent only buys profitable companies that are doing well. And they were puzzled as to why Tencent would go out of their way to buy a company like Ubisoft that has been struggling for so long publicly. Although
It's wild right now, especially when it comes to how many studios are struggling financially. One of the big issues is this corporate greed that seems to be infecting the whole industry. They mentioned how consulting groups have become like a plague, making decisions that don't reflect the needs of the developers or the gaming community. It's the honest developers who end up suffering from these poor choices. The thing is, the insider told me that many developers feel they can't speak freely about what's going on because they risk getting blacklisted or fired. It's sad to see this level of control, almost like a cult mentality, where everyone has to toe the company line. This pressure can stifle creativity and lead to decisions that hurt the quality of games. We also talked about how games are ballooning in cost and complexity, yet developers are often held back by layers of bureaucracy. Imagine trying to build a house but having to get permission from your boss for every single brick you want to lay down. It's frustrating and slows everything down, making it feel like indie games might be the future since they can move more quickly without all that red tape. Another thing that came up was the situation with Ubisoft, which has been in the news for all the wrong reasons. There have been serious allegations against key people in the company, and it seems like the quality has taken a hit since some of these executives have left or been forced out due to scandals. It's a mixed bag though, because while these individuals might have been bad in their personal lives, they were also responsible for keeping the quality of games high. It's a complicated situation that raises questions about how much personal behavior should impact professional roles. The insider also mentioned Ashraf Ismail, a former Ubisoft director who faced allegations and ended up getting fired. It's wild that he found a new job right away at a Tencent studio, even though he was previously accused of some serious misconduct. It makes you wonder about the industry's culture and how some people can just move around without really facing consequences for their actions. Overall, the insider's perspective paints a pretty bleak picture of the gaming industry right now, between the poor decisions made by big execs, the problems with localization, and the fear among developers to voice their opinions. It's clear that the industry has some serious challenges ahead. It's not all doom and gloom though. There's still a lot of talent out there, and hopefully, as indie games rise, we'll see some refreshing changes. All things considered, the entire situation got written off by one side of the political spectrum as a racist endeavor to make sure the main character isn't a black man. It got championed by the other side as evidence of DEI narrative pollution and historical revisionism for the sake of cheap diversity points. Regardless of where you fall on that subject, it's not a good situation to have as a gaming publisher. That's kind of the foundation here. But going further, for anyone struggling to connect the dots on this part, after waiting a hefty number of years for a Japanese-themed Assassin's Creed video game, Ubisoft then chose to make the main character not from Japan. This means you go around as a non-Japanese, foreign-born, historically debated real-life figure, slaughtering an untold number of Japanese characters in the process, and then advertise that story by using symbolic representation of the Nagasaki atomic bomb. That is a colossally stupid thing to do, and was widely panned by critics as a completely tone-deaf blunder. Still, none of that even comes close to a complete picture, because Ubisoft has been struggling on a bewildering scale for at least the past couple of years. See, Assassin's Creed isn't their only franchise, despite being probably the one that they're best known for, and it's certainly not their only AAA level project. Quadruple A video gaming, which is supposedly what Ubisoft gave the world when they released Skull and Bones. Just one problem: Skull and Bones took almost a decade to finally get released, and in reality, only ended up going the distance at all because Ubisoft was stuck in development hell as a result of their deal with the Singaporean government. Basically, they had to make this game because they didn't have a choice, aka government contracts, hundreds of millions of dollars, many years of work, and the CEO quite literally called it a quadruple A game, only to have it immediately fail totally on release for a multitude of reasons. Gamers have won, and developers are afraid of gamers. I mean, they are literally realizing that they can go out of business if they don't listen to and respect their customers. There's this big topic going around in the gaming world lately. You know how sometimes games release all buggy or half-finished, and it's just a mess? Well, apparently, developers and publishers are finally starting to wake up to the fact that players are not okay with that anymore. It seems like the tolerance for rushed unfinished broken games has really hit a wall, and some companies are realizing that pushing out an unfinished product with a "we'll fix it later" attitude doesn't fly these days. About time, right? So here's what went down. The head of Paradox Interactive, the publisher behind games like Cities, Skylines, and Prison Architect, did this super candid interview with Rock Paper Shotgun. Basically, they admitted that their most recent launch, Cities, Skylines 2, was a disaster from a technical standpoint. People were excited, but when the game dropped, it was completely unoptimized and almost unplayable for a lot of fans. What's interesting is that Paradox admitted they knew there were going to be issues with performance, but they didn't realize how badly it would be perceived by players. They kind of underestimated just how fed up we all are with games that launch in rough shape. I mean, can you blame them? People spend their hard-earned cash, and they expect a polished experience. So now they're delaying Prison Architect 2 indefinitely because they don't want to make the same mistake twice. It's one of those lessons learned situations. In that interview, the Paradox team dropped a quote that really stood out to me. They said, "We knew that we would have some issues, but we underestimated how it will be perceived by players." I think that's really telling. Like, they knew things weren't going to be perfect, but they didn't think it would be that big of a deal. That's a problem, right? Because these days, people aren't putting up with it. Gamers have higher expectations now, and with how vocal communities can be online, you can't just ship a broken game and expect players to be cool with it. The kicker? They went on to say that the days of "we'll fix it over time" are fading. Players don't want to hear that anymore. I mean, sure, patches and updates have been a normal thing for a while, but if your game is barely working at launch, you're going to catch serious heat. And it's not just Paradox. We've seen it time and time again. Think about the backlash games like Cyberpunk 2077 got when it launched in a broken state. It's a hard lesson, and some developers just aren't learning it fast enough. The real question is whether Paradox will stick to their word and really change things for the better. It's easy to make promises after a rough launch, but following through is the real challenge. Have you ever wondered why I barely use Nintendo gameplay footage or trailers whenever I talk about them? Well, here it is. If you really want to understand how truly relentless and, some would argue, downright brutal Nintendo can be when it comes to protecting their IP, then you need to check out this website, suedbynintendo.com. It's a deep rabbit hole of lawsuits that Nintendo has filed, giving you a glimpse into the company's legal gymnastics. While most companies do their best to avoid lawsuits, Nintendo seems to embrace them with open arms, targeting anyone from large corporations to individual YouTubers and streamers. Their copyright strikes are legendary, and they happen a lot. It's impossible to cover everything here because the list is ridiculously long. But let's zoom in on just one example of how aggressive they can be. Ahead of the worldwide release of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, players in regions like Australia and Japan got access to the game about 12 hours earlier than other parts of the world. Pretty standard stuff in gaming. Different regions have staggered release times, and players who know the drill often create foreign accounts to snag the game early. But what did Nintendo do? They hit multiple streamers with bans and copyright takedowns just for playing the game early. Even though it was officially out in parts of the world, Nintendo wasn't having it. Take Linkus7, a professional speedrunner and streamer. He got hit with a 48-hour ban from Twitch for streaming Age of Calamity. Another streamer, Reversal, also got banned mid-stream, even though he was using an EU Switch account to access the game. And it wasn't just Western streamers. Japanese and Korean streamers got hit too, despite Age of Calamity being officially available in their regions. This mess looked like some automated takedown system running wild, but Nintendo didn't exactly rush to apologize or clear things up. This wasn't the first time something like this happened either. It's practically a routine with every major Nintendo release. Back when Animal Crossing New Horizons and Pokémon Sword and Shield came out, streamers ran into the same kind of legal hammer. Nintendo has a well-earned reputation for going hard on copyright claims, even when it feels like the situation doesn't warrant it. The frustrating part is, even when players are technically following the rules, like downloading a game that's legally out in certain regions, Nintendo's takedowns often feel like overkill. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you scroll through suedbynintendo.com, you'll find cases of ROM sites being dismantled, hackers facing huge financial penalties, and individual YouTubers getting hit with strikes for simply using Nintendo footage in their videos. Nintendo has even gone after fan-made games and mods that don't directly compete with their titles, but might feature characters or themes too close to the originals. Here's a wild one. Back in 2015, Nintendo launched something, the Nintendo Creators Program. And it basically said, sure, you can put your gameplay on YouTube, but we're taking a cut of your earnings. This was during a time when Let's Play videos, walkthroughs, live streaming were blowing up. And many content creators were making solid money by showcasing their skills or just goofing around with games. Nintendo decided they wanted in on that money too. The program forced creators to sign up and agree to share a percentage of their YouTube ad revenue with Nintendo, or risk getting their videos taken down with copyright strikes. Yeah, it didn't go over well. Most people saw it as a greedy move, especially when other big gaming companies were letting YouTubers and streamers show off their games for free. Recognizing the value of this kind of free advertising, Let's Plays and streams often boost game sales. People see a game in action, get hyped, and go buy it themselves. But Nintendo didn't seem to get that. They saw people making money off their games and wanted a piece of the pie. The backlash was instant. Content creators hated it, especially smaller channels that couldn't afford to lose ad revenue. Bigger names in the gaming world spoke out against it too. It seemed like Nintendo was completely out of touch with how modern media and fan communities worked. The backlash got so loud that by 2018, Nintendo quietly killed the program. Now they have more relaxed guidelines allowing people to upload gameplay videos, but that whole fiasco left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. It's almost like Nintendo doesn't want free advertising. Japan does have strict copyright laws, but they're a little different from how things work in the US. In Japan, intellectual property is protected heavily, and companies like Nintendo take a very conservative approach to how their content is used. It's less about the gray area of fair use that exists in the West, and more about companies having the final say over their IP, no matter what. So in that sense, what Nintendo did with their creators program was kind of in line with Japan's broader culture of protecting intellectual property at all costs. But I want to show you everything that's wrong with gaming journalism and misinformation today. All right, let's see what they have to say. And I quote, "Lots of people are saying that it's too soon for the PlayStation 6, and in theory, I agree with them. Since the first 2 years of this gen basically don't count, thanks to the pandemic, it's ridiculous to release a new console now, considering there's been virtually no new first-party games in the last 2 years either." He continues, "Sony has made an absolute disaster of this generation as far as I'm concerned. They've managed to be both obsessed by live service games and incapable of making any. They wanted 12 by 2026 and Concord was the first one. And it lasted precisely 2 weeks. Okay, let's take a step back. Let me explain everything wrong with this comment. First of all, yes, Concord is one of the biggest flops in gaming history. Yes, that is true. You know what else is true? 2024 is one of the most successful years for Sony's PlayStation. I'll elaborate on this very soon, but let's see what else he has to say. And I quote, "One theory that I find believable is that Jim Ryan ordered all the first-party studios to make live service games, then he was kicked out, and now they're going back to making single-player games. I don't know how true that is, but clearly nothing is being produced at the moment, and nothing is currently scheduled for the future. These things take time to turn around." End quote. Jim Ryan's retirement is the best thing that happened to the PlayStation brand. Yes, he wanted Sony to go live service. Yes, it hurt the brand a bit. Did Sony completely stumble and messed up everything? Hell no. It was a small hiccup to say the least. PlayStation delivered a lineup in 2023 that solidified its position as a leader in the gaming world. Titles like Burning Shores, Final Fantasy XVI, Spider-Man 2, and The Last of Us Part 1 remake. While PlayStation exclusives dominated headlines, the rest of the gaming world wasn't sleeping. Baldur's Gate 3 and Resident Evil 4 remake added to the massive catalog of 2023's unforgettable experiences. 2024 started off as a bit of a letdown for gamers worldwide. January and February felt like we were hitting a low point. Morale was down across the board. Gamers were looking around and seeing no exciting prospects on the horizon. Sony came out and said they had no major releases planned for 2024. Xbox, riding the same wave of apathy, basically said, "Yeah, us too." It seemed like the big players were taking a year off, and the gaming community was left feeling abandoned, like a kid left alone at a birthday party after everyone else decided to leave early. The forums were filled with frustration, the memes were flowing, and everyone was just waiting for something, anything, to happen. It was during this bleak period that we saw the gaming community at its most vulnerable. People began reminiscing about the good old days, and the internet was flooded with talk about old classics and retro gaming. "Is this what it's come to?" they asked. A generation of nothing? It felt like we were losing on all fronts. But then, almost out of nowhere...
Look familiar? Scenes like these are happening all over the galaxy right now. You could be next. That is, unless you make the most important decision of your life. Prove to yourself that you have the strength and the courage to be free.
Helldivers 2 dropped. This wasn't just another game release, it was a Sony-owned IP that nobody saw coming. And it didn't just drop, it broke records. Within its first week, it sold 12 million copies, smashing expectations and injecting a much-needed adrenaline shot into the arm of the gaming industry. Suddenly, the narrative flipped on its head. Instead of whining about how dead the year was going to be, people were buzzing with excitement. Helldivers 2 saved the gaming industry, became the rallying cry on social media. The game had grit, a sense of humor, and most importantly, it was fun. Exactly what everyone needed. People were already calling it Game of the Year. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth dropped and got rave reviews with scores of 92 on OpenCritic and 94 on Metacritic. Critics are loving how it balances staying true to the original game's heart while delivering new surprises and deeper storytelling. The characters like Cloud and Aerith feel more fleshed out than ever, and the game isn't afraid to tackle heavy themes like life, death, and nature's resilience. Gameplay-wise, it's smoother and more refined than the Final Fantasy VII Remake, with better combat mechanics and an open world that feels alive and thoughtfully designed. Just as the hype around Helldivers 2 began to cool, another game came in hot, Stellar Blade 2. A Sony exclusive, it was a love letter to the kind of action games that made us fall in love with gaming in the first place. Naturally, the game received a wave of love from gamers, but in the current age of outrage, it also drew some ire. Some gaming outlets tried to cancel it, dragging it into political debates that had nothing to do with the game. Yet the game's success was undeniable, and it added fuel to the fire that maybe, just maybe, 2024 wouldn't be so boring after all. Summer Game Fest became the stage where the next act of this chaotic year began. Sony's state of play was, to put it bluntly, underwhelming. People had expected more after the early success of Helldivers 2 and Stellar Blade 2. But when Sony stumbled, Xbox took the opportunity to drop the hammer. Their showcase was explosive, announcing a slew of new games that had everyone buzzing. The Xbox fanbase claimed victory. The internet echoed with takes about how Xbox had blown Sony out of the water. But just when it seemed like Xbox had reclaimed the crown, the hype was tempered by a reality check. All the major games Xbox had announced were also coming to the PS5. The exclusivity wars suddenly felt like a joke. Then, more PlayStation hype. The chaos kicked off with the increasing hype around PlayStation 5 Pro. After Tom Henderson's clarification, there was a surge in optimism about the next-gen console. But with that optimism came a tidal wave of speculation. New leaks every week, debates over the Spectral Super Resolution (PSSR) capabilities, and questions about its potential to truly deliver 4K 60 FPS. It was like a feeding frenzy. Tech channels, gaming news sites, and even mainstream media couldn't help but jump into the fray, each one speculating on the specs, price, and what games might launch alongside it. PS5 Pro leaks kept trickling in. Everything from the specs to the release date to its rumored cancellation was the topic of heated debates in forums and comment sections everywhere. It was chaos. And then, finally, gaming insider Tom Henderson stepped in to put an end to the speculation. The PS5 Pro was coming. The rumors were blown out of proportion, and gamers once again could breathe easy. Just as everything started to settle, the gaming community found itself plunged into yet another controversy. Game Science, the developers behind Black Myth Wukong, were accused by outlets like IGN of promoting sexism within the game. The accusations sparked a firestorm of debates, with gaming journalists and certain communities going after the devs. But as quickly as the controversy erupted, it was debunked. Gamers rallied together, rejecting the narrative pushed by the journalists. For a moment, it felt like the whole gaming community was united against a common enemy, those who they felt were more interested in pushing agendas than celebrating games. The backlash against the journalists was so strong that it nearly overshadowed the game's release. But not quite. Black Myth Wukong launched and absolutely crushed it, boasting 2 million players on the first day. It proved everyone wrong and reinforced the idea that at the end of the day, gamers just want a game. They don't want to get tangled up in debates over gender politics or identity crises. They want to swing a staff around as a mythical monkey and beat up bears and tigers. And the numbers proved it. The game went on to sell 18 million units in its first 2 weeks. But was it the best game ever made? Hell no. Not even close. The game had its fair share of flaws, janky invisible walls, no map, and some technical hiccups on the PS5. But here's the kicker. It didn't matter. It reminded everyone that a game doesn't need to be perfect to be loved. Sometimes it's about the pure fun of it. The devs of Black Myth Wukong didn't preach politics. They didn't preach ideology. They just wanted to make a fun game. And they did. And gamers responded. The whole year felt like one big middle finger to those trying to force gaming into a mold it didn't fit into. People were playing Helldivers 2 2, screaming about democracy while blasting aliens. They were diving into Stellar Blade 2, admiring its sleek, over-the-top action and booty. They were checking out First Descendant, even if it was just to see some booty. These games proved a point. Gamers aren't all perverted white dudes who just want to see some eye candy. They're people who want variety. They want to escape. They want to have fun. What do all these games have in common? Fun, sexy, weird, and they don't care about the real world. That's what gaming is about. Gaming is about fantasy. Gaming isn't about coming home from the office and playing a game where the protagonist reminds you of the HR people that look over your shoulder and question you. That's why Concord had such a humiliating flop. I played all of them: Helldivers 2, Black Myth Wukong, First Descendant, Stellar Blade, and they were all a blast in their own ways. Because that's what gaming is about. And we didn't even talk about Astrobot yet. This new game just dropped this week and is getting rave reviews across the board. And I'm not talking your average, oh, this game is good kind of reviews. No, people are actually comparing it to Super Mario Bros. And you know if someone's bringing Mario into the conversation, they're not playing around. This game means serious business. To give you an idea of how awesome it is, even our own review gave it a perfect 5 out of 5 stars, saying it doesn't just match Astro's Playroom, it goes way beyond that. The reviewer even said it could rival or maybe even outshine the best of Mario's adventures. That's some high praise. So, to say that gaming and Sony were disappointing this year is a huge understatement and a very bad case of misinformation. Besides Concord, every single game that Sony released this year has people screaming, Game of the Year. Yet, this is supposedly the worst year for Sony. First, let's set the stage to be clear. I'm against forced diversity, aka DEI, in gaming, particularly unnecessary gender and race swaps in movies or games. Take Mortal Kombat, for example, a franchise with strong original female characters like Sonya and Katana. This year's MK1 announced the Reign of Chaos DLC, bringing back fan-favorite characters Cyrax and Sector, but they were gender swapped to females. Why was that necessary? In a fighting game, this doesn't just disservice male characters, but also female characters like Sonya, Katana, and others. Is the inclusion of strong women like Sonya and her daughter not enough? It feels like men are judged and labeled sexist when they question these changes. But how can developers explain such unnecessary swaps? Worse yet, this only seems to happen to male protagonists. Often white male characters are swapped to black women, but you never see a black female character swapped to a white male. Do you see the inconsistency, dear developers? Now, let's talk about one of my favorite games of all time, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. If you followed this channel for a while, you already know how much I love that game. I always find an excuse to talk about how cool it is, and I truly believe it's the best Spider-Man game in terms of swinging mechanics ever made. But today, we're going to discuss Peter Parker and MJ. First off, we can't ignore the fact that MJ doesn't look anything like she did in the first game. Reviewers and journalists can't just say, oh, MJ aged a bit. That's not how aging works. Nobody ages 2 years and completely changes their physiology. All of a sudden, she goes from this cute girl with big eyes to having a pronounced jawline, and her nose changes form too. Look, I'm not saying MJ looks terrible in Spider-Man 2. If this were her character model in the first Spider-Man game, there would probably be zero drama around her appearance. But now, she's completely unrecognizable. If you put MJ from the first game next to the current MJ, they don't even look like sisters. Judging players for noticing this is in poor taste. Now let's talk about Peter Parker. What's going on there? He went from being a decent, good-looking guy who looked like an experienced adult in Spider-Man 1 to looking like a teenager in Spider-Man Remastered and now like a model in Spider-Man 2. And you try to explain that the characters aged? Yeah, Peter aged into a Justin Bieber lookalike in Spider-Man Remastered and then evolved into Justin Timberlake in Spider-Man 2. Meanwhile, MJ aged into a completely different person, with the only similarity being her hair color. The same goes for Miles Morales. And then when you criticize these changes, you're attacked and labeled as sexist or a bigot. And then they wonder why their next game doesn't sell and claim it's because bad people defamed them. That argument wouldn't hold up in court. Here is a quote from Mel Mann that I couldn't have said it better. The Insomniac Spider-Man game sold you Peter Parker from the beginning. Then once you were hooked, they switched the lead to Miles. If your goal is to manipulate people and run some sort of social experiment, the freedom to choose exists in the open market. No one is obligated to buy any game. Capitalism isn't the environment for social engineering through leisure products. The only outcome for that is bankruptcy. In the art and storybook book industry, it's common knowledge that boys will gravitate to books with boys, cars, and mechanical items, while girls will read books with anything. The trend carries over into all media. There are no calls from men to encourage women to watch sports or support big male-led action movies, just as men aren't crying for representation in the fashion or cosmetic industries. Men are interested in men's stuff, women are interested in women's stuff, and men's stuff. People who want to sell children's books create and market them appropriately. While calling people incels for resisting change, it's important to understand the motivations behind people's preferences. Make all your male-led games and make all your female-led games, but don't trick your audience. Be upfront, let them make informed decisions.
But bigger than all that, you would be surprised that a lot of people will not even get into those arguments online, and they'll just quietly move on from your franchise.
I also heard the devs saying, "Oh, the new tech didn't work well with Peter's old face model." What are you even talking about? So Peter Parker's original face didn't work with the new tech. So you decided to swap Peter's face with MJ's face? Yeah, that makes sense.
Former Sony executive even told people that if they don't like it, don't buy it. Why is this always their go-to advice? And why is it that when people follow this advice, they get accused of bigotry and racism? For God's sake, just pick a lane.
Gamer hate is at an all-time high now because many games are failing, and the people promoting them resent gamers for not buying them. This movement stems from individuals who support the modern gaming environment, but have control over the field, like Anita Sarkeesian and companies such as Sweet Baby Inc. These people have turned the industry into a failure in the market, leading to a growing movement of hate toward gamers. We've seen executives, voice actors, and developers come out and say things like, "Don't buy our games if you don't believe in our philosophies," which is happening across the industry. It's a bad strategy for making money, but making money isn't the goal anymore. It's about pushing a philosophy even if the industry burns with it. This trend mirrors what happened in the comic book industry, where stores closed down even as MCU films made billions, all due to forced ideologies taking over. Former Sony chairman Sean Layden echoed this sentiment, telling gamers not to buy games if they don't share the company's philosophies. Even though he's no longer there, this mindset persists. Ubisoft, for example, is facing bankruptcy because it's not delivering what gamers want. Delays like the one with Assassin's Creed Mirage show a disconnect between the industry and its audience. Games like Conquered, Dustborn, and Flintlock have also failed due to this approach, losing millions in the process. Meanwhile, the gamer hate movement continues as developers, voice actors, and writers attack their fan bases.
Journalists, developers, and players then jump to defend the practice, not realizing that these creators are using social issues as a shield of inclusivity to defend their poor quality, lack of skill, lack of ability, and lack of creativity by saying that anybody who's criticizing them are bigots. What's really disappointing is that there's not enough people that are calling this out, that it's not wokeness or DEI that's killing these games, it's people without talent that are killing these games. Name a game that was perceived as woke, that had awesome gameplay and a great story, and nobody wanted to play it and it didn't do well in sales. Guess what? You can't find it. It doesn't exist.
We saw it with Dragon Age, where the former lead writer told fans off, despite some expecting success. Like with Dragon Age Dreadwolf, it's likely another failure, contributing to the growing divide between gamers and the industry. In the end, gamers are turning to titles like Black Myth Wukong Space Marine 2 and Helldivers 2 games that cater to them. The First Descendant is not that great of a game. It's dumb fun, just like Suicide Squad. But people want to play as these characters, and people do not want to play as these characters. The same types of examples continue with Star Wars Outlaws and Flintlock Siege of Dawn. Pokemon Go received a more inclusive character design, which made everyone look like a flat piece of cardboard. And with upcoming games like Fable and Dragon Age showing strong woke influence on character design, the future of those games isn't looking too good either. Despite what games journalists and fence-sitting YouTubers might tell you, influence from companies like Sweet Baby Incorporated is easy to spot from a mile away, and it's extremely off-putting. Games with woke character design are so painfully obvious. And again, what games journalists will never admit is that character design matters in games. Nobody would want to play as Geralt of Rivia if he looked like this, and nobody would want to play as Lara Croft if she looked like this. You'd never catch anyone cosplaying as a Conquered character or making fan art of a Conquered character unless it's people trying to improve the character design, because the originals were that bad. But for some reason, reason, people can't get enough of Overwatch characters. Gamers, and honestly people in general, want to see beauty and masculinity in their media. We are visual creatures, and this right here isn't grabbing anyone's attention, or has anybody saying, yeah, that hero looks awesome, I can't wait to buy a poster of that train engine. The fact that people were willing to play the first Descendant really speaks to how much character design means to gamers. Tons of people played Stellar Blade that probably wouldn't even think twice about it, because Eve was a total babe, and some journalists don't understand that and think Stellar Blade sold on its gameplay merits alone. In the documentary about Rocky, Sylvester Stallone explained how the producers loved the script he wrote, but didn't want to cast him as the lead because of his looks. Stallone, however, was determined. He insisted that if he wasn't playing Rocky, there would be no movie. Despite being offered large sums of money to sell the script without starring in it, Stallone stood his ground. Ultimately, the studio agreed to let him play the role, which turned Rocky into a massive success, making Stallone a household name. Here's a reality check for all the man-hating women out there. From the perspective of a woman, men are stronger than women. Men built this world and are dying every day to keep you safe. Men constructed the house you live in, fix your lights, and repair your car when it breaks down. Men need feminine women in their lives for balance, and women need strong men for protection. There is male privilege. When the Titanic sank, who stayed behind, and who went in the lifeboats? Women and children. When a village is attacked by another tribe, who fights and defends the tribe? Men. We live in a world where we judge a man for being straight, but celebrate men who dress as women and compete in the Olympics. While society pretends there are no differences between us, there are many. The war is already raging online, and half of you don't want to listen to reason. Have fun with that. And dear devs, stop being hypocrites. Stop hiring these snowflakes fresh out of college who complain about everything. Gaming is fantasy, just like cartoons, movies, and magazines are fantasies. Stop complaining about unrealistic bodies or that these women are too hot. I can't relate. Grow a pair, please. Did men complain about Arnold Schwarzenegger being too perfect, or Jackie Chan being an awesome fighter, or that Dragon Ball Z was full of super buff bodybuilders? No. Men hit the gym in Dragon Ball Z or Mr. Olympia tank tops. They know they'll never be Goku or Mr. Olympia, but they get inspired to be better and healthier, learning that achieving greatness requires hard work and suffering. So, dear women, do better. Instead of complaining about unrealistic body proportions in games, get inspired to be healthier. Don't expect to be a top model, but strive to be your best. Just like how guys want to meet their favorite MMA fighters or stand next to LeBron James, be humble and stop ruining media.
Fail, you're not even trying. My wife told me this great expression. To get something you never had, you have to do something you never did.
Failure has been achieved, thank God. Now, the only place to go from failure is to win.
CEO of Saber Interactive a week or so ago came right out and commented on an Asmongold video, saying that he is against political messaging in games and hopes to make more games like Space Marine 2 as a way to combat this kind of content we see. I need a statement like that from Sucker Punch, renouncing this backward, regressive approach. It's okay if they hire people like this voice actress. I don't mind that necessarily, as long as the activism doesn't seep into the game, but I need to be assured that they aren't going to preach at us before I'm willing to give the game a chance. And that was the stance of many gamers right away. They were very standoffish with this game. In response, Sean Layden, the former head of Sony Interactive Entertainment, felt compelled to weigh in, saying, "If you don't like it, don't buy it." You may remember this was the same line used years ago when Battlefield 5 came out. People hated that they were trying to portray women as fighters in World War II in that game. When gamers complained, they said, "If you don't like it, don't buy it." The marketing strategy was asinine, and it failed miserably. They saw a staggering drop in sales numbers. I think it's also noteworthy to point out the contradiction in the arguments of those who want to bury any criticism of their corporate masters. On the one hand, when we complain about a female protagonist being shoehorned into a series for pandering purposes, like what we are expecting in Ghost of Tsushima, they call men sexist bigots. Yet, on the other hand, when we point at Stellar Blade, which features a female character as the protagonist, and we say that game is good and should be a Game of the Year candidate, and they call men incels. Okay, this is the part where I will talk a bit about my background. I've worked approximately 10 years in sales and marketing. I've sold high-end cosmetics like anti-aging and masks and stuff. I'm not going to bore you with the details of the high-end cosmetics because you don't care about that kind of stuff. You are not my target audience for that crap. But you know who cares? Women. I sold packages between $500 to $1,500 USD. Now you might be thinking, asking who the hell buys creams at $500 to $1,000. I'll tell you who, not you. So this is the part that's really been confusing me for the past couple of years with these brain-dead statements from devs. I worked in sales, and sales is brutal, guys. I trained people in sales. I trained them how to identify the target audience. And our target was women, age between 40 to 60. That's the sweet spot for the big sales. These are the women that are going to spend thousands of dollars for cosmetics and consultations. I sold products and services to a 38-year-old woman at over $6,000. Shocking, I know, but for her it was worth it. And the only reason I was able to make these kind of sales is because I studied the market. I studied my target audience. It's easy, guys. It's called market research. Oh, and another thing, white women spent more because they are a lot more insecure than black women about their skin. If you say that this statement is racist, you are a complete fool, and I'd make sure that nobody would hire you in sales. Next, so when I started to look deeper into what these gaming corporations have done in the past years, and what people they hired, and the type of agendas they are pushing, it's not just shocking to me. It's beyond my mental capabilities to understand why and how. I think quantum physics makes more sense to me than what these gaming corporations are doing. Imagine, just imagine, I go one day to the office, and the big CEO of the company comes in and says, we need to be more diverse, and we need to include 20-year-old males as a target customer. And let's neglect our most loyal customers that already gave us millions of dollars in profits. Oh, and let's start name-calling them. If I'd hear something like that from our CEO, I'd call the ambulance. The whole team would be convinced that the CEO is having a stroke. Dear publishers, there is nothing wrong with diversity in games, but just stop gender swapping. Stop hiring people that are not cool to write characters like this.
But luckily for newbies, this is a good jumping on point. I did the whole Robin Hood thing in Gotham a while. That iceberg.
Having said that, there are a bunch of people who saw a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima and thought, hey, that looks pretty cool. The original was so good that Sucker Punch has built up a ton of goodwill, and gamers want to give this thing the benefit of the doubt. I, for one, want this game to be awesome, so it's no surprise that the trailer itself was fairly well received. But over on social media and platforms like YouTube, people are beginning to talk as details about the game are being uncovered. Look at how quickly, for example, The Last of Us Part 2 was turned on by gamers. Once word spread about what was in it, and that was all the way back in 2020. Gamers are much better organized now, and even more of the casual gamers are starting to pay attention to the preaching in games and avoiding wokeness once it is uncovered. With all this being said, let's read about this rumor detailed in an article from That Park Place. A new rumor claims that Sony executives are seemingly not happy with the response to the announcement trailer for Ghost of Tsushima, and that a number of developers were blindsided by the new female character, Atsu. YouTuber Endymion On shared this information from an alleged insider. He said, apparently, Ghost of Tsushima blindsided many people at Sony who were not aware of what Sucker Punch was making. He added that people in the mid-levels at Sony were confused when the game was announced, as they were under the impression that Jin Sakai would be getting a sequel. Endymion also shared that they are not happy at all when it comes to the response to that game either, internally at Sony. But yeah, this rumor makes a lot of sense. Put yourself in the shoes of a mid-level Sony executive right now. They just lost a fortune on Concord. They were embarrassed because everyone but them could apparently see from a mile away that this game was going to be a failure. The thing is, at these corporations, the people at the top aren't the ones who lose their jobs over these failures. They may be the ones making the bad decisions, the ones listening to the shrieking feminist types in their office and deciding to embrace controversy, but they are not the ones punished for the failures. The mid-level people are the ones who pay with their livelihoods. Imagine how those people are feeling right now. Games take forever to develop these days, 3 or 4 years at a minimum. So there hasn't been enough time for these video game companies to course correct in response to the figurative bloodbath that has taken place in the industry in 2024. These executives are watching in horror as games that started development in 2020 and 2021 are now coming out and running into the anti-woke buzzsaw that has really taken hold. So it's no wonder that we are hearing about people panicking at Sony right now. This game should have been an easy success, but choosing not to bring back Jin, replacing him with a female protagonist, and hiring someone like Erika Ishii to play the character, that's like taking an easy layup and turning it into a half-court shot. Sure, you might still make it, but it's a lot harder. Now, On the other hand, here's my take. I'm not going to name names, but someone recently said, if there's no Jin Sakai in the narrative, I'm done. And if it's full of woke ideology, that's where I stop. Oh, and FYI, all actors are crazy. Again, maybe I'm overlooking something, but it feels like unnecessary drama. Oh man, Unknown 9. Awakening really out here thinking it's the next big thing, but it plays more like it forgot its own homework. Let's start with the basics. Sure, it gives you some mind control powers that let you play Puppet Master with enemies. But guess what? That's the only interesting thing it has going for it. And even that gets old fast. It's like the devs went, hey, we've got this one cool feature. Let's call it a day. Meanwhile, everything else about the game is about as generic as a dollar store action figure. Combat? Sloppy? Stealth? Please. It's like the game is practically begging you to skip it altogether. The AI is so stupid, you can practically take a lunch break while you're standing in plain sight, blowing things up, and the enemies still won't notice. It's like they took notes from every bad stealth game ever, threw in some tall grass, and called it a day. And the combat encounters? Yawn. You're stuck dodging the same brain-dead minions over and over, with attacks that feel less satisfying than swatting a fly. And don't even get me started on the story. They tried to pull some Last of Us and God of War vibes, but it's like they were too lazy to finish the job. The plot's more predictable than a bad soap opera, with characters so flat and lifeless, they might as well be cardboard cutouts. But hey, at least they can spout some deep mystical nonsense, right? Wrong. The dialogue and magical jargon are so convoluted, it feels like they threw random words in a blender and hoped it would sound cool. And the bugs? Oh, they're the star of the show. How does a game run this poorly on a high-end PC? The frame rate dips, the main character gets stuck in place, and the cutscenes look like they were storyboarded by a toddler. I recently asked the community about their thoughts on the upcoming Dragon Age game, and the reactions were quite mixed. With some new leaks hinting at a different combat system and a narrative that picks up after the last DLC, there's a lot to unpack. Many fans are excited about the potential for innovation in the gameplay, with the new combat style generating a sense of hope that it could bring a fresh experience. The interview with this alleged tester revealed a wealth of concerning information. The best summary I've seen comes from Grum's Mark Kern, the former team lead of the original World of Warcraft. He tweeted, Dragon Age, Veilguard leak, worst fears confirmed, and it's much worse than we think. This is the end of BioWare. Here are some of the key takeaways from the tester's insights. The game is described as excessively woke, with modern language interrupting immersion. For example, a Qunari companion introduces themselves with, I identify as non-binary. Many feel that such inclusivity detracts from the escapism that games should provide. Players may find that romances are locked unless they choose a pronoun other than he, him. To fully engage with the romance system, you might need to be pansexual, limiting choices otherwise. Solace appears to be sidelined significantly, only becoming relevant at the end, which is reminiscent of disappointing plot twists in other franchises. The quality of animations is reportedly reminiscent of Mass Effect, Andromeda, leading to characters looking lifeless and poorly animated. It sounds like the narrative structure undermines player choices. Drawing comparisons to Mass Effect 3, key characters are either diminished or sidelined entirely, leading to a frustrating gameplay experience. Feedback from testers about the game's direction is reportedly ignored, especially regarding concerns about the woke elements affecting overall gameplay quality. Gameplay mechanics. Certain segments, like the gameplay in the Fade, are described as tedious and unengaging, filled with fetch quests. Major characters from previous titles, such as Varric, have been relegated to minor advisory roles. Overall, the outlook for this game is bleak. If you want to be ahead of all the gaming leaks and news, specifically PlayStation news, time for you to subscribe. And as always, a like on the video is very much appreciated.